here's Chris Matthews. But before we get to Chris Matthews, we're actually going to play a clip that really bothers Chris Matthews. And why is Chris Matthews important? I truly believe he has a pipeline into this White House. If you really want to know what upsets President Obama, listen to Chris Matthews. Because you will see a reflection of the agenda through MSNBC. Captain Obvious is back! Thank you! Yes, but hardball. And Chris Matthews is a very bright guy, and he has an incredible background in politics and understanding politics. He's worked for some extraordinary people, including Daniel Patrick Moynihan and Tip O'Neill. I mean, that's pretty big. He was a speechwriter for Jimmy Carter. So I'm not doubting that. I'm not taking those shots at him. It just bums me out when he lowers himself. But it gives you some insight into how deep the truth can cut, especially when it comes to waking up from foreign policy fantasy land. First, an exchange that took place in the 2012 debate on foreign policy. Governor Romney responds to a jab, a juvenile jab, quite frankly, from our president, Barack Obama, regarding Russia. Roll it.
Because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
But I'll respond to a couple of things you mentioned. First of all, Russia, I indicated, is a geopolitical foe. Not a,
Number one,
excuse me, it's a geopolitical foe. And I said in the same paragraph, I said, and Iran is the greatest national security threat we face. Russia does continue to battle us in the UN time and time again. I have clear eyes on this. I'm not going to wear rose-colored glasses when it comes to Russia or Mr. Putin. And I'm certainly not going to say to him, I'll give him more flexibility after the election. After the election, he'll get more backbone.
Donald Rumsfeld also weighed in on this, and I'm going to call an audible, because he is referred to in this clip, and I feel it's necessary to bring up somebody who was mentioned, and that would be Donald Rumsfeld's response to what has taken place in not only Russia, but also Afghanistan with our relationship with one Mohammed Karzai. Karzai coming out in support of the invasion of the Crimean Peninsula by one Vladimir Putin. He's not going to stop there, by the way. And it is cut number 27 of all things. Yes, cut 27. And I play this for you because these are two things that he references, and I'm going to tell you why this is important. Because what happens is, no matter how much you try to distort history or even the present, reality can come in, and even the mainstream media can't pull you out. Roll it.
The United States gets someone that is friendlier?
He was friendly. Our relationship with Karzai and with Afghanistan was absolutely first rate in the Bush administration. It has gone downhill like a toboggan ever since the Obama administration came in. Now, take, for example, the fact that we have status of forces agreement probably with 100, 125 countries in the world. This administration, the White House and the State Department, have failed to get a status of forces agreement. A trained ape could get a status of forces agreement. It does not take a genius. And we have so mismanaged that relationship. And I think that he has tried to separate his harshness against the White House and the administration from the American people and the people that he appreciates have served in that country.
So here is Chris Matthews. Roll it.
These Republicans, Romney, Rumsfeld, remind me of kids who flunked out of high school but come back to tap on the classroom windows. They're only there to get attention and otherwise disrupt those who are still trying to learn. Got it? dropouts, flunkers. Romney, I didn't know the guy even took the course on foreign policy. He never said a word about it. All he talked about was his businessman's approach to things. If he ever said anything of importance about the world beyond his latest business venture, it's hard to remember it.
Okay. Why do I want to get in the mud right now with this guy? I'll tell you why. I'm not going to get into it. I'm just going to point out that Romney was right. And President Obama, not saying he wasn't looking for world peace. I think he was. I don't think he sits there and says, yay, war. I think he wants the very best for our country, but he believes that weakening our country is the very best, and that way it will spread the power about. He doesn't believe in being a superpower. His actions reflect that. And while projecting weakness historically has yielded the result of inviting aggression and creating power vacuums that are filled with the people with the guns and who are the most ruthless, that's what we've seen. He also has a very different concept of freedom, and I believe that comes from more of a liberal, leftist view of America that unfortunately has been used by our enemies to weaken us and advance their cause. I would bring up, I believe, General Dean in, no, excuse me, what wasn't Dean, certainly not, in Vietnam. North Vietnamese general was quoted in Grunt magazine. Now I'm just seeing this. I don't have it in front of me, folks. Sorry. But he talked about using the American anti-war left against, they knew they couldn't touch us militarily. They just knew it. We won. But they knew they could influence the political will. And a great book on this would be The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Vietnam War by Phil Jennings. Our friend Phil Jennings did a great job there. And the reason I bring this up is you hear his frustration. Oh, they're flunkers. A couple things that we need to keep in mind, and this is a duty to history and also to prevent the assassination of one's character and record when it comes to the issue of the Iraq War. It was Rumsfeld's war invasion. It was Paul's occupation. Barbara Lerner wrote a great piece in 2004 detailing this. Another point in that is that when we look at his criticism, once again, we have him making these statements about Mitt Romney being a businessman and only caring about business. I mean, that's a caricature of Mitt Romney. I realize that President Obama knows about foreign policy. He has to. He's the President of the United States. Now, his viewpoints are, and the foundation from where he is coming from and his worldview, I think, is being exposed as one that doesn't recognize history. And his belief that Vladimir Putin is on the same page and is willing to work with us with the original reset in 2009 to put pressure on Iran has been completely exposed as a failure. His embracing of people like Morsi from the Muslim Brotherhood, not realizing what the Muslim Brotherhood is, and not putting freedom first, moving toward stability and mutual respect like we had in Iran for a regime that was slaughtering its own people in 2009, and he didn't want to meddle in their affairs. Freedom doesn't advance when people are crying out for your support and you equivocate or ignore. It doesn't work that way. Especially in light of the fact, like it or not, and he did recognize this the other day in his speech in Brussels, that he is the leader of the free world. I say all this because I look at the caricature of Mitt Romney that is being assailed by one Chris Matthews, who I believe would know better, but is seeing failure. I mean, it's much like the economic policies. What do you get when you hear people who are still defending these absolutely failed policies of the stimulus? Well, we needed more money. I mean, it's ridiculous. Half the growth that we've seen out of past recessions, the fundamentals of a strong economy that is not going to yield a bubble is a strong dollar, low taxation, simplified tax code, mind you, that incentivizes production. I mean, it doesn't take a rip in Einstein, folks. You know this. The Reagan Revolution, which was embraced by Bill Clinton, also a strong dollar guy. Not a guy I had a lot of faith in a number of ways, and was, quite frankly, found his behavior to be one that wasn't presidential. And the impeachment for lying under oath, yeah, should have been removed. But I digress. Opinions can vary on that. Here's the point. Clinton, the reason he had a strong economy, tax cuts, shrinking government, reforming welfare, incentivizing work. These were not his ideas, mind you, and a strong dollar, which he can be given credit for in that sense. We're the Reuben of the Fed. Reagan, strong dollar. Now, you look back and you say, what grows the economy? What incentivizes it? It's recognizing human nature. President Obama's done the exact opposite. But when you speak to people on the left about these policies, they're always pointing to a promise, and then inevitably it descends into class warfare because all they can gin up is hate because their solutions are exposed as failures. Unfortunately, we are seeing that in a foreign policy, which is the government's job, by the way. Chief job is to protect its people. And these mistakes are costly. And they will yield a butcher's bill, I pray not, but a much greater butcher's bill in the future. And people will say, why did you do what you did, especially in light of history? You can point to now and ask the same question in the present. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Afternoons with Aaron. Next, AFR Talk.